So a very hard-hitting track there from a band called Symphony of Screams from the North Island of New Zealand, featuring Matt Smith there on vocals. Now Matt Smith is the special interview we have in this part of the show. He's from New Zealand and he wandered into the CiTR studio completely randomly about a week or so back, and he was here for I guess a non-music related conference, but he popped into the studio, let us know who he was, let us know he's a representative of New Zealand music and his label specifically, AAA Records. And we've since caught up on the phone since he got back to New Zealand. And this is a part one of the chat that we had. So here we go. This is Matt Smith of the band Symphony of Screams and also the record label AAA Records. Now you will notice that he has a British accent, because even though he lives in New Zealand, he's actually of British origin, so we talk about that. Anyway, here we go. Part one of my interview with Matt Smith, currently based in the North Island of New Zealand, of the band Symphony of Screams. Okay, so this is CiTR Radio and Stranded, the Australian Canadian music and talk show. And of course New Zealand is part of this show. I frequently play Kiwi music. And I actually today have, I think, the second ever New Zealander I've been able to interview on the show, which is exciting. A gentleman named Matt Smith, who is calling through from. Matt, where actually are you calling from?
I'm actually in a place called Winery, which is about just under an hour north of Auckland. Out in the countryside, it's great.
Okay, and for people who are completely unfamiliar with New Zealand, which island is that?
So that's the North Island. And we're right up in the north part of the North Island, so the warm bit, basically.
Ah, very, very wise decision to live
there.
Yeah,
exactly.
As I am in the warm bit of Canada, the tiny little warm bit. So, now, Matt, he is a member of a band called the Symphony of Screams. They're quite a hard-edged, I guess you've been described online as grunge metal. Is that fair enough, or...?
Yeah, I think it's always hard, isn't it, to put yourself in a category, unless it's obvious. And I always find it very difficult to put us in a category. But I suppose if you're looking at our influences, then, you know, they were very much out of sort of the British metal scene, the early metal scene, and then obviously very influenced by the West Coast grunge scene as well. So, I mean, they would be our most obvious influences. And also things that are quite progressive, like Pink Floyd and things like that. So I think there's elements of that in our music as well.
Okay, well let's go right to Britain then. What is your is Britain where you had your musical coming out, or is that's where you formed your sensibilities and your first bands?
Yeah, so I was in the music industry in the UK. I mean, I was working in studios and as a musician for etc. since I was probably 17, and I played in a band back there which was called Sender, and then when that band broke up, a band called Sundog, and it was actually Sundog that got the interest of Sony Records, but that all went tits up when Sony got bought out by BMG, and in all of that chaos basically I decided I had enough and moved over to New Zealand with my Kiwi partner and started a new life, and it's been wonderful. Never looked back.
Ah, so what era are we talking about of British music that when you're part of it there?
So that'd be 9 years ago. Yeah, so it was sort of the time of Kasabian coming out and all that kind of stuff.
Right. So, well, I guess well past the Britpop era.
Yeah, post Britpop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sort of the hangover period of Britpop. But there was still, I mean, Britain's such a big musical market, and I think internationally you see such a small part of what the music scene is like there, and it really is quite vibrant still in the underground side. So there's lots of different ripples of music going on, and we were definitely a guitar band, but we had that sort of very British, I guess, post Britpop sound that caught the attention of the record labels, and it was funny because. Sundog hadn't been going very long when it all started to kick off and get very exciting, and put us under a huge amount of pressure, and tested our friendships and so forth. And, it was a very interesting period, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I'm sure just from talking to you already, I can tell you have quite an intelligence about you, and that you probably have learnt so much through those experiences that you now bring to your work in New Zealand, in both producing and as an artist.
That's very kind of you. I hope so. I just do my best. I think that's the crux of it, is just trying to do your best. I think if I'd known what I was getting myself into when we decided to start the label, I probably wouldn't have done it. But I'm glad we did. Yeah. So it's good to be of service.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the album, the label is called AAA Records, which stands for All Good.
All Good Absolute Alternative.
That's right. Otherwise known as AAA Records, and based where you are living.
No, we've basically got an office in Auckland, in an area called Westmere in Auckland. We've also got a couple of studios, the Red Room Studios out in Helensville, which is a town just out of Auckland, and a post-production studio at our head office in Westmere. And that's taken some time to get all that stuff going, but yeah, that's how we operate.
Can you sort of fill us in on, I guess, maybe the philosophy behind the label and maybe the artists and things like that?
Yeah, so, I mean, a little bit of background stories. We started, we built a studio here when I sort of formed the Symphony of Screams, and for our own benefit. And what happened was that studio got busier and busier, to the point where the under-the-house studio didn't work anymore. We needed to build a commercial studio, so we did. And we built Red Room Studios in Helensville, which is a beautiful analog digital state-of-the-art studio. And we've got more and more work coming in through there. We had international producers coming in to use it. And it occurred to me that we got sort of the infrastructure to not just to work as a producer or working with artists to help develop their sound, but actually help them get their music out. And I had the privilege of meeting a guy called Marcus Coldre, who's a German producer, and he spent 20 years working as a producer in Germany in music and also the film industry, doing sound design and sound production for movies. And his partner Lisa, who's an incredible graphics designer, and we worked on a project together for Gameloft, actually, doing some sound design for them. And we got talking, and we decided that it was, we had similar passions, and we wanted to form a record company, so we did. And realising that we got the talent between us to do that. And basically, the thing that got us excited is empowering creativity. That's what we're really about. Like most places in the world now, major labels are in a retreat. They're basically buying each other out, trying to figure out who they are, who their market is. They're trying to figure out what model is going to work for them in an ever-changing delivery system. And so it's not really that conducive for investing in new artists, certainly not alternative artists, not taking huge risks. And we thought, well, you know what, why don't we do that? Why don't we find and try and work with artists who we like? And we sort of followed the Jules Holland model. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a period when I still listened to Jules Holland on the radio, and not Jules Holland, sorry.
John Peel?
John Peel, thank you. Jules Holland was also important to me, but John Peel is who I'm trying to... I was just watching Jules Holland on the telly, that's what thrown me. I was watching Lordy on Jules Holland, and I got him in my mind. No, but John Peel, and I mean, the great thing about listening to a John Peel show, as I guess everyone who's into music knows, is that you'd be listening to a Swedish death metal band, and then the next thing you'd be listening to is a Swahili guitar troupe, followed by some fantastic dub coming out of Jamaica, or then you hear something coming out of South America. And he didn't really think about music in really just in genre. He thought about whether he liked it or not, and whether it had that intrinsic thing that was that human communication. So I guess that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to find honest, great, hard-working artists, and then we'll match their hard work with our ability to produce great music with them and get it out to the world. And that was our ethos. Of course, that sounds easy, but a lot of work goes into that.
That's right. And I mean, it just stands to reason that when you have an ethos as solid as that, it allows you to withstand the inevitable ups and downs and tribulations. You know, it just seems like that's how things work.
Yeah, I think you're right. You know, I'd be lying if I said there hasn't been dark times. I mean, that's just the nature of the universe and being alive. But I think it's the philosophy that you bring to that, and realise that, you know, everything that we go through is for our growth and is a learning, and try and see it that way, so that when we're faced with difficult periods of time, we think, okay, well, that's okay. What can we learn from this, and how can we be better? How can we serve as a label our artists better? How can we, you know, improve our offering better? How can we, you know, and you know, there's always a blessing in behind every cloud somewhere. You
That's
have to look
right.
hard enough.
And so how long has it been then since you landed in New Zealand and this has become what it is?
So I've been here 9 years now, and the studio has been going for about 6 to 7 years. 6 years in its current form, and the label's been going for just over 3 years now. And we've churned out in that period of time, you know, a significant amount of music. So it's been a lot of work, but it's been, you know, really joyful too.
Besides your own band there, Symphony of Screams, can you tell us a little bit about some of the other artists on the label?
Yeah, absolutely. The very first artist we released was a guy called Thomas Coffey, and his album was Thomas Coffey and the Grinders, and the album's called Dominoes. And he's the sort of folk pop sort of artist. Sort of reminds me a little bit of Jeff Buckley-esque. He's got that kind of beautiful quality about him. He was the first album we released. Then we released a band from this local area. I should say that Thomas was from Christchurch, which is in the South Island, the city that had the earthquake. In fact, we were together up here when the second quake shook and smashed his house to pieces.
Wow.
We were sitting together watching it on the TV, which was a very surreal experience. The Kaipara Jammers, the KJs, they're fantastic guys. They're young, dynamic. They've got a uniquely New Zealand pop, rock, surf, dub sound. I love them. They're fantastic fun. They're high energy. Their shows are fantastic, and they're really popular. They're getting a lot of radio play around the world at the moment, which is fantastic. Then we've got sort of heavy metal bands like Fractured, and then we've got artists like Nat Rose, and she's got a most amazing voice. She's a Maori woman from a soul background, and then we come through to artists like Cara Gordon and the Wreckage. Cara, a Maori guitarist who's one of the best guitarists in the world, literally. I mean, he's quite astounding. He was at Berkeley, and he's currently in the UK recording an album with Alabama 3.
Wow.
A blues album, and he's quite very, very special. And then we've got albums that are about to come up from a band called Radio Glow, and Gene from Radio Glow used to be in a New Zealand, another sort of famous New Zealand band back in the day called Rubicon, and this is his latest venture, and we're literally mastering that album next week, so that's really quite exciting. And then the Mice on Stilts, another very exciting band, kind of hipster-esque, but they're you know, all got beards to a fault, and but creating this incredible soundscape music. I mean, absolutely delicious. It reminds me very much of a movie score, but you know, with movements and beautiful Rhodes pianos and viola and horn section, and then haunting guitar. Quite stunningly beautiful. And their debut EP comes out in November, so that's really quite exciting.
Wow.
And I probably missed some as well. Of course, we also represent the German band McCoy Sun Project, which are a techno, all ex-metalers playing techno but live. And they're actually on tour at the moment around Europe. We just represent them down here. And the Tour Booze, which are an Australian electronica outfit, consisting of a visual artist by the name of Tim Grucci and his musical writing partner. And so, yeah, we've been really busy.
Well, and geez, thanks. You've literally just given me a whole show worth of material just there, what you described. So this is going to be wonderful. And definitely, I can tell how so eclectic, and that is, as you said, your vision for the label. You've stuck to it. And I mean, New Zealand, I should say that every now and then I run into people here, and New Zealand music has been so well represented by the Flying Nun label and all the work that they did that New Zealand sticks out in people's minds here.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. Whenever I travel, the first thing that people say here into music, they say Flying Nun. And when you're in New Zealand, you hear about